Bill Henshaw here again, Constitutional Crisis Channel, another current events topic which I touched on before, but I want to mention it again because it's important, and that's the use of executive orders by the president, no matter who it is. And personally, I expected a big improvement in this area when Trump got elected and is now in the White House, and I haven't seen it. And this is one of the biggest areas we need for improvement because we're not supposed to be making laws by executive orders. That's not how the nation and republic was established, and it shouldn't be how things are working. Laws get passed by Congress, assuming that they have a quorum in both houses, and as you'll find listening to my videos, they don't have anywhere near close to a quorum in either one of them. But executive orders, what is that? That's the power of the president acting as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't recently been made aware of any declared state of war by Congress that would allow him to invoke that power. I've not been aware of any governors of any states, quote unquote, asking him to come into the state and take care of an emergency by the use of the federal military. I don't know what it is. I haven't seen any declared state of rebellion or invasion, much like we had with the war between the states. So my biggest question about this is, what the hell is the emergency that justifies the use of this power? And we'll talk more about this later, but this is an interesting subject because if Congress treated the Civil War as a war, quote unquote, and they said in 1861 right at the outset that they were not going to do that, and yet the tune changed when the 39th Congress gets in there with good old Thad Stevens and George Boutwell and other bastards like that. All of a sudden, now they said the states have committed state suicide by seceding, and yes, this was a war of aggression. Well, if that's true, then typically how you end a war is with a treaty. I am not aware of any treaty with the Confederate States of America. I'm aware of the surrender of General Lee at Appomattox Courthouse, no question about it. But I have yet to see anything like that, and it makes you wonder in the back of your mind when you've done as much study and due diligence as I have, is this state of emergency still in existence? Is this the one they're relying on here? I don't know. As silly as that seems on the surface, trust me, it's not. For example, World War II, although you would think it ended on September 2nd, 1945, when the Japanese signed the document on the USS Missouri, wasn't officially over until 1953, about the time old Bubblehead took office. This is 8 years. What the hell was going on for those 8 years that we had a continued state of war? You could see that for 6 months, maybe even a year. But 8 years. And by the way, on this subject matter, we're going to go into a case later that you'll hear about for the first time from me, and hopefully some of you have heard of it, called Yakus versus United States, Yakus. I don't have the site for this one off the top of my head, but we'll put it down below. You'll see it'll be there. You can look it up. And it's about a case that involved rent control 4 or 5 years after the war was over, and it was still ongoing. I believe it's out of Georgia. And it's a very interesting case, and I'm going to reread it myself and see if I can pick out some more things I haven't seen about this and figure out what the hell they're talking about there. But this is the war economy, and we've been, in my view, on a war economy since December 7th, 1941, and maybe before that. And the reason for it is, I think when you're going to be circulating paper money, you can just take ink and paper and print quote-unquote money. There's no way you can do that on a peacetime economy. War is essential, or the appearance of war. That's why you get all these takeovers of governments, like with the Philippines, for example, with Ferdinand E. Marcos in there, and people like that, and and in Panama with the pineapple down there. And you get enemies like that, and now North Korea, who we can take out in 15 minutes flat. I mean, it's ridiculous. We don't have enemies. In fact, you want to do some interesting reading, you get a book by Jonathan Kwitney, Kwitney. This will be on the bottom too, called Endless Enemies. If we didn't have them, we'd have to create them, and that's exactly what we do to make it appear to the American people that there's a state of danger, and there almost never is. And I can tell you from personal experience, growing up during the time period of the Red Scare, that there was no problem with the USSR whatsoever. The American people were deluded and deceived by the government in that in that whole thing, even the Cuban Missile Crisis, quote unquote. Because if you study your history, as I have done, and I've got some excellent books on this, you find out that the Americans, in effect, paid for the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. And they, in effect, controlled that government ever since then. The borrower is always servant to the lender. They created that enemy. They did the same thing with Hitler a little bit later. And that's more of a questionable case because we ended up with a heck of a war with that bastard in the 1930s and 40s. But nevertheless, Hitler doesn't get there without a lot of American support. The book on that is called Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler by Antony C. Sutton, S-U-T-T-O-N. You read that book, this is names, dates, places, facts, exactly like I how to do things. You know, he doesn't say it if he couldn't prove it, and I'm the same way. I don't say it if I can't prove it. Once you read these things, you say, my Lord, what is going on here? Changes the whole outlook on how the government runs business and does things. But they must be on a military economy. If they're not, we're going to crash, maybe not overnight, but it won't take long with fiat paper currency. And by the way, that's another reason I argue that we have no states here, because Article 1, Section 10 says, no state shall make anything but gold or silver coin a tender in payment of debt. Well, yeah, the argument now is, well, isn't the state doing it? Which is true, because there are no states. They got converted over to territories by the 14th War Amendment. That's why they can get away with this crap, but no one ever thinks to ask the question to the Supreme Court. Let me rephrase that. The court knows it's not going to get that kind of question, from the attorneys that belong to the Supreme Court bar. They're not going to do it because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them, whether they'll get bumped off. I mean, who knows? But a lot of them are in on it too. They've gone to Harvard and Yale and this, that, and the other, and they may know some of this stuff, but they're not going to let you know that they know it. And that's where you get into a case we're going to talk about much more later called Ashwander, where the court said in its 7 rules for status and standing that the court will not address an issue of constitutionality of a law in advance of the necessity of answering it. And they know damn well that most of these questions are never going to get answered because people don't get the education to know they exist, let alone that they can bring the questions to the Supreme Court, and the attorneys aren't going to do it. That's not what they get paid to do. And it's a big salvation for us, and you take a look at this Ashwander video, which I'll be doing fairly soon. This one single case, if they would have taught me this 50 years ago, it would have made a big difference, because now you can take that case and use the court's own words to bite them and say, listen, you said this, I believe you. Now I'm coming here and I want you to answer my questions. I've got the right status, I've got the right questions, and I've come from the right court. Do the job you took an oath that you were going to do to preserve, protect, and defend this Constitution. The sooner we start doing this, the better off all of us are going to be. Trust me on this one. Thank you.